Another guilty plea tied to one of Hillary Clinton's top contenders for running mate in 2016. Mayor Kasem Reed was one of Hillary Clinton's top potential vice presidential candidates during her failed campaign in 2016. One of his top aides pleading guilty in this bribery case. This is Larry Scott, pictured here. He was actually involved in a scheme with one of the mayor's family members, and this case seems to be getting closer and closer to the mayor himself. Them noting here, quote, "Every time there's something new, we get a tiny step up or a step closer to Mayor Reed." Quote, "We're talking about orbits, and you can't really get much closer than family. That's about as close to the mayor as you can possibly get without being the mayor himself." So in this case, Larry Scott, 54 years old, the man in charge of making sure women and minority businesses got a fair slice of Atlanta City Hall contracts, pleaded guilty to breaching the trust of the public, breaking the rules, lying, and lining his own pockets with cash he did not report to the IRS. Larry Scott admitted to U.S. Federal District Judge Steve Jones that he took money from a company he formed to help businesses win city contracts, a company whose partner included then Mayor Kasem Reed's brother, Tracy. So the family of former Mayor Kasem Reed directly implicated. Quote here, adding to the significance of this guilty plea by Larry Scott, saying that Scott had the power and ability to influence large decisions, saying the very, very powerful position held by Larry Scott was designed to help those who most need it. The breach of public trust erodes confidence in our government. Some really bizarre details in this case. They have a timeline of the Atlanta City Hall investigation here. In January of 2017, well-known Atlanta construction company CEO Elvin Mitchell Jr. was charged with conspiring to pay more than $1 million in bribes to unnamed individuals to help win city contracts. Later that month, and the days after Mitchell was charged, two news outlets learned of an apparent attempt to intimidate Mitchell in September of 2015. After Mitchell started talking to the feds, someone threw a brick through his living room window with an ominous message. Dead rats also were left on Mitchell's property. Channel 2 and the AGC later learned that Shanderick Barnes, a former City of Atlanta employee, was arrested in November of 2016 in connection with the incident. Barnes had connections to both Mitchell and Mitzi Bickers, who is a campaign consultant who helped Kasem Reed win the mayor's race in 2009. Bickers would later serve as the city's Director of Human Services from 2010 to 2013. Barnes later pleaded guilty to federal charges of interfering with a federal witness. So through this campaign consultant, this person who ended up pleading guilty to interfering with the federal witness, this weird intimidation effort, is connected to the mayor through this campaign consultant. The end of January, ER Mitchell pleads guilty, admitting to paying bribes totaling over $1 million over a period of years. Then Mayor Kasem Reed, trying to distance himself from former staffer Mitzi Bickers. It's the connection in this intimidation effort. The mayor starts trying to distance himself from this staffer who had connections to the bribery scandal. On a city ethics document filed by Bickers, she described herself as directly reporting to Mayor Reed. Reed had attempted to claim that that was not true afterward. Channel 2 Action News had uncovered a link between an effort to silence E.R. Mitchell, who admitted paying the bribes, and Bickers, Reed's former Human Services Director. On February 2nd, 2017, through her divorce attorney, Mitchell's wife told Channel 2 Action News that she'd uncovered records showing that her husband, E.R. Mitchell, misrepresented his wife's role in his companies and her experience in the construction industry on documents that he filed with the city. His wife said that she had no idea her husband used her name to win contracts or to get certified as a female minority business owner for bonus points in the bidding process with multiple governments, including Fulton County and Jackson, Mississippi. February 8, 2017, federal prosecutors charged Charles P. Richards Jr. with conspiracy to commit bribery in order to obtain City of Atlanta contracts. In April of 2017, a former city worker filed a lawsuit against the city, accusing them of buying city vehicles used for the mayor with federal funds that had been set aside for police cars. They used these funds instead for buying city vehicles used for Mayor Kasem Reed. In May of 2017, emails obtained by Channel 2 Action News and the AGC show Bickers, who had not been publicly identified as a target of the investigation, had hired a criminal defense team that sought to justify the sources of her income to federal prosecutors. In July of 2017, the AGC obtains bank records showing Mitchell and companies he controlled paid Bickers and her companies more than $1.6 million over 3 years during the time period of the federal investigation, including payments that corresponded with ones Mitchell admitted to making in his guilty plea. The report for the first time linked Bickers to the alleged bribery scheme. In August of 2017, in the heat of the race to replace Reed as mayor, City Council President Mitchell, then one of the top candidates, called on Reed and council colleagues to support a moratorium on the approval of city contracts that start in the next year to give the next council and mayor their say-so. Mitchell said a pause was called for given the scrutiny of the federal probe. The call triggered a fiery response from Reed at the time. September of 2017, Adam Smith pleads guilty to a conspiracy charge in the federal bribery case. Prosecutors said Smith accepted more than $30,000 in payoffs from an unnamed company that did business with the city. September 29th, 2017, it was learned that federal agents in September had raided the offices of the PRAD Group, a longtime City of Atlanta contractor. On October 5th of 2017, then Mayor Kasem Reed sat down with Channel 2 Action News and said that he is not involved in any way with the federal bribery investigation at City Hall. He made that claim at the time. Contractor E.R. Mitchell is then sentenced to 5 years in prison on October 10th, and Charles Richards sentenced to more than 2 years in prison after Mitchell pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit bribery and money laundering, and Richards pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit bribery. January 16th, 2018, Adam Smith is sentenced to 27 months in jail. Prosecutors said that Smith secretly recorded a number of conversations on his own and later recorded more at the direction of federal authorities. He admitted to taking at least $44,000 in bribes. On March 8th, 2018, a news outlet obtains text messages that reveal an effort by then Mayor Kasem Reed's press secretary to delay releasing potentially embarrassing information about unpaid water bills by Atlanta city officials, and when it finally released, to make it as difficult as possible to understand. March 9th, the next day, the AGC reveals legal bills provided by the city to the newspaper the previous year in response to an open records request about the federal investigation were not genuine records. March 13th, 2018, the State Attorney General's office asked the GBI to open an investigation into possible violations of the state open records law by the press office of then Mayor Kasem Reed. April 4th, 2018, Channel 2 uncovers records showing a city-tied nonprofit called Partners for Prosperity paid $40,000 to cover a portion of luxury airfare for Reed, for the mayor. His luxury airfare was covered by this city-tied nonprofit, Partners for Prosperity. Several other city officials were also paid to fly to South Africa for a controversial economic development mission. Reed had promised non-governmental sources would pay for the trip, but AGC/Channel 2 report revealed the money had originated with the city, was donated to the nonprofit, and then returned to the city a few months later. On April 5th, 2018, Mitzi Bickers pleads not guilty to the 11-count indictment on charges that she took $2 million in bribes to steer City of Atlanta contracts to at least 2 contractors from 2010 to 2015. On April 9th, Barnes, the former aide to Bickers, is sentenced to 37 months in prison after admitting to conspiring to intimidate Mitchell by throwing a brick through the contractor's window after Mitchell started cooperating with the feds. April 11th, 2018, news outlets file a complaint with Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr alleging a culture of political interference with open records requests at Atlanta City Hall and requesting mediation to implement reforms for repeated violations of state law. On April 17th, 2018, Channel 2 Action News obtains 2 federal subpoenas seeking documents from City Hall. One focuses on Atlanta Mayor Kasem Reed's deputy chief of staff and a man convicted of wire fraud. The other subpoena focuses on city credit cards, including one used by Reed. The second demand for records also seeks information related to Partners for Prosperity. On April 19th, 2018, the Invest Atlanta board votes unanimously to create a committee to perform an independent review of a $40,000 transaction between the city and its nonprofit fundraising arm, Partners for Prosperity. April 25th, 2018, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation pays a surprise visit to Atlanta City Hall in relation to the ongoing investigation into open records requests. April 26th, news outlets obtain texts from a personal smartphone of the top spokeswoman for former Mayor Kasem Reed. They show the spokeswoman tried to compel a senior city official to delay production of public records, repeatedly telling him to thwart a city attorney's advice to comply with an open records request, and even issuing a veiled threat to involve Reed. On May 14th, 2018, news outlets find a 10-point subpoena dated September 9th, 2016, and kept from the public with the Mayor Kasem Reed's knowledge. This was kept hidden from the public with the mayor's knowledge. This subpoena, 10-point subpoena, which included demands from the federal prosecutors for information about lucrative construction and concessions contracts at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, vendors with close political ties to Reed, and financial records for 3 members of his cabinet. In August of 2018, records obtained by the AGC and Channel 2 show that former Mayor Reed reached secret terms in a settlement with the airport general manager that he fired in 2016, agreeing to pay $147,000 more than was disclosed to City Council and the public. After his firing, the general manager had accused the mayor of improprieties involving contracts at the airport. The accusations led to the September 2016 subpoena that the Reed administration later hid from the public. Later that month, Katrina Taylor Parks, who served as deputy chief of staff to former Mayor Kasem Reed, was charged with accepting bribes in 2013 from an unidentified city vendor. The AGC was able to identify the vendor as a company led by Paul Marshall, who pleaded guilty to wire fraud in an unrelated case. Midway August 2018, Katrina Taylor Parks pleads guilty in federal court for accepting $4,000 in bribes. On August 28th, 2018, investigators obtain a federal grand jury subpoena seeking records of Mayor Kasem Reed and his office's credit card spending and travel for the entirety of his 2 terms in office. The subpoena follows reporting by the AGC and Channel 2 that showed Reed and members of his cabinet spent hundreds of thousands of dollars between 2015 and 2017 alone on travel and other items with City P cards. On October 24th, 2018, a federal grand jury adds a 12th charge against Mitzi Bickers in an updated indictment. Prosecutors allege that Bickers tried in 2014 and 2015 to win contracts in Jackson by paying for parties, food, airline flights, hotels, chauffeured car services, entertainment, fundraisers, and campaign services. In January 14th of 2019, Katrina Taylor Parks, Deputy Chief of Staff for former Atlanta Mayor Kasem Reed, was scheduled to be sentenced in federal court to nearly 2 years in prison, but as U.S. District Court Judge Steve Jones announced her sentence, Taylor Parks collapsed on the floor. She was taken by ambulance to the hospital. On January 29, 2019, Katrina Taylor Parks formally is sentenced to 21 months in federal prison for accepting nearly $15,000 of bribes while working in Mayor Kasem Reed's administration. February 11th, 2019, the press secretary for former Atlanta Mayor Kasem Reed, Jenna Garland, has been served 2 criminal citations for violating Georgia's Open Records Act. These are the first criminal charges filed under the act in Georgia. Finally, June 11th, 2019, news outlets learned that federal authorities are zeroing in on another one of Kasem Reed's former top aides. Grand jury subpoena calling for years of records related to Jim Beard, who served as Reed's chief financial officer. And September 4th, most recent update, Larry Scott pleads guilty to wire fraud and filing false tax returns. Scott ran a critical part of the city's procurement operation, a department that's been central to the federal investigation. Scott resigned suddenly last week after a visit from the FBI. Scott's name was not previously mentioned in early stages of the Atlanta corruption investigation, but also significant given the connections through this business directly to Mayor Kasem Reed's family, to the former mayor's family as well. So, as they said in the opening quote, getting closer and closer to the mayor with each step of this investigation. Let me know what you think. Very interesting case. I will continue to follow this and any related stories. Anything else significant that is connected to this, please let me know your thoughts as well. I'll follow up soon. Thanks, everyone.